on the computer, going. Yes, there we go. Okay, so we'll start off by going straight to over here. All right, so I think as far as I've seen, everyone who's here has a Microbit, one of our little fun robots. So that's great. I had written on my little run sheet that if we have anyone who has turned it without a Microbit, we can run through the emulator, but it looks like we haven't got to use it, which is great. Okay, so we'll start having a little bit of a chat about what a Microbit is and how it works. So the BBC Microbit. Well, the BBC Microbit is what we're going to be programming with. It's known as an embedded system, and the way we're going to be programming it is with Python. So we're not going to be using the exact same functions that we talked about last time. So if you weren't quite 100% there, that's totally fine. We're going to be using very different functionality, but it's still going to be, we're still going to actually write it in a very similar way. So it'll still look pretty familiar. And so the Microbit we can use to build all kinds of incredible electronic projects. All right, but let's have a quick chat about what an embedded system actually is. So basically, it's an embedded system is a computer that's usually programmed to do just one thing at a time. So it might not necessarily sound particularly useful, but because they're so versatile, you can make them do so many incredible things, and they can be really, really useful and powerful tools. They're typically small, and they aren't usually very powerful from like a processing perspective, but yeah, again, they're very versatile, and so they can be used for heaps of important jobs, and they can be incorporated into thousands of different kinds of projects. So then why would we use an embedded system? Well, because they're really small, they're great for doing really small jobs. So if you just want a simple calculation, a simple display, those sorts of things are perfect. We also actually use embedded systems in a whole bunch of common things. This is something we'd spend a lot more time with the students talking about, where they'd actually find embedded systems. I'm not going to spend too much time on it right now. You can kind of get the general gist from the list that's up there. Things that basically have one specific purpose and don't need to be like a regular computer and do 1,000 trillion things at once, basically. Okay, so looking now at what actually is on a Microbit. So I'll refer more to the diagram that you can see up here, because it's a little bit easier to see than my personal little Microbit that I've got here. But okay, so first of all, we have two programmable buttons. We have button A over here and button B over here. So again, very, very simple things. You can just get each of those buttons to do one thing. You might have something happen when they're both pressed at the same time, but we're not going to go that too far ahead. We also have this 5x5 array of LEDs. And again, one of the things we're going to be looking at in particular today is how to control those LEDs, because while they don't necessarily look like a screen, ultimately they do actually function as a basic screen that you can use, and you can program every single one of those individual pixels to display at a different time or when different things happen. It all just comes down to the way that you code it. And then we also have these electrical input-output circuits, but we can go more into those in future sessions. So on the back, then we also have our USB plug, which, as I'm sure you've already discovered, is how we're going to connect these bad boys to our computers. And then we also have the reset button that kind of does what it says on the tin. Basically, when you had your Microbit plugged in, hit the reset button, and no matter where it is in the program, it'll stop, reset, restart, go from the very beginning. Nothing will be held over from beforehand. We also have our little processor down here, so that's basically just what makes it work, what tells it what to do with certain commands. We have a compass, which isn't actually pointed out in the back here, but there is a little compass in there. And there's also an accelerometer, which again isn't actually pointed out on here, but it's I think it's about here. Oh yeah, there's the compass and there's the accelerometer. And those are two things that we'll look at using more in later sessions. Okay, so how do we program it? Well, we're going to be using this particular Python editor. So I recommend that you grab it up now on your computers if you're able to. I'll send through this link to our chat bar so that you can just click on it to follow it if you'd like. If I can find our chat. Oh, some sharing. Here we go. Chat. There it is. Okay, so there you go. So you can follow that one, and then I'll show you the screen that you should get for that one in just a moment. Basically, this is going to be where we write all of our code in Python. Now, what's very important is that obviously to get the code from our computers onto our microbits, we're going to have it plugged into our computer. So you haven't got to do that right now because it will only take a few seconds to sort of set everything up. But make sure it's plugged into that USB plug on the very top up there. And if it has any programs running, then it'll start flashing like mine's doing from when I was playing around with it earlier. But in general, you can just sort of let that sit off to the side now. We haven't got to worry too much about what it's doing. I promise it won't break anything. So we'll have a talk more about how to actually get our programs onto the microbit once we've actually started making something. But the basic gist of it is, I will just switch over the share now over to my, we'll just share my whole screen. That'll be easier. Okay, so over here, if I can get that to go away, there we go. So this is the screen that you should have gotten up when you followed that link that I sent through before. Basically, to get a program onto the microbit, all we have to do is make sure we've given it a name, which is just up here in this little corner over here. Oh, I'll just this back into just me. There we go. It's a bit easier to see. So we can. Yeah, so give it a name just up here over in this little corner. And then once you've done that, you can just hit download here. What that's going to do is it's going to save something called a .hex file into whatever your downloads directory is. So now if I find that file just here, I can also get a window up for my, Daisy, for my microbit, which plugs in just like a USB, just here, like that. And now all I have to do is just copy that file and paste it over into my microbit just here. What's going to happen is it's going to just, my microbit's going to start flashing on the back while it saves the new program to it. And then once it's done, it'll just start the program automatically on my microbit. And I'm not sure if it's mirrored for you, but what's happening right now is just saying, hello world, and then it's going to flash a heart for me. There we go. And it'll just keep running that over and over now while it's plugged in. That's okay. I'll just leave that one over there for now. There we go. And just like with the USB, when we take our microbits out of our computer, you need to make sure that we actually, need to make sure that we safely remove it, just like that there, but I'm not going to right now. All right, we haven't got to worry about what's there though. We can talk more about what the actual code is there in a moment. Okay, so when we use microbits, we have to use those libraries that we were talking about last time, where it has like what we do is we import the library, and that means that we get access to all these very specific sub-functions that are only part of those libraries. And to do that, we use this line of code here from microbit import star, but we'll use that one a little bit later. All right, so our very first program, this is the one that popped up automatically when we opened up our editor over here. So this is the most basic microbit program you're going to find around, basically. It does exactly what it says in the tin. So up here we have, first of all, from microbit import star. So we know, first of all, okay, great, I've got access to all the microbit functions. I'll be able to program with it, and my editor is going to know exactly what I'm talking about. And then while true, which as we learned last time around means basically forever, because true will always equal true. While true, so whenever this is plugged in, basically, what needs to happen is on the display, we want to have something scrolling, and what needs to be scrolling is the text, hello world. We'll go through this a little bit slower later on. This is just so we can get through this last slide on PowerPoint. Then what's going to happen is on the display, we're going to show a particular image, and that image is going to be heart. And then it's going to sleep for 2000, and that just basically just means that the screen will go off for a very short period of time. But again, don't worry if that didn't sound familiar, if that was a bit confusing. We're going to go through everything a lot slower in just a moment. We're just going to get through this really fast. Okay, so displaying images. So the microbit library actually comes with some images pre-programmed in them. So we use that by saying display.show image.insert name here. What that means is, so as you might remember from the last time, what we're saying here is we're essentially saying on the display, So we're accessing the display function of the microbits on our little LED screen. We need to show something, so it's a show subfunction. Show something on the display. Image basically accesses the little set of images that come pre-programmed. And when we say image, obviously we don't mean like a full-on picture that has multiple colors and crazy things. It's just a certain array of, like a certain selection of which lights from our LED array are turned on that will form something resembling a picture. So it'll be a really basic image. So we'll choose an image from the set of ones that have been pre-programmed. And we also have some here, a list of some here that are pre-programmed here. So happy, sad, angry, asleep, surprised, yes, no, and heart. And a few of those we might look at a little bit later on as well. What else do we have to cover here? Okay, so this is where it can get a little bit more confusing. I'm actually going to pop the thumbnails back up just so I can see all of you guys. Okay, so as we've already discussed, the microbit has that 5x5 array of LED lights. And what we can actually do is, as I was saying before, we can actually individually program each of these lights to tell it exactly which ones need to be turned on and off at a particular time. To do that, we start using array coordinates. Now, what we mean by that, as you can see on the diagram here, we have a little picture of a little 5x5 array. So if we start at the very top, we can tell it, okay, I need to know where I am on our x-axis, so where I am across, and where I am on our y-axis, so where I am going down, basically. We always start at 0 with everything in programming. If you've ever used coding before, you would know that we always start at 0, especially in Python in particular. And we always start, with microbits, we always start in the top left-hand corner. So we have obviously 0, 1, then we would have 1, 1 would be here. So we have 1 across and 1 down, and so on and so forth, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, we can control a particular LED with the following command. So as you can see here, display.setPixels, X, Y brightness. So we tell it, okay, I'm talking about our display on our microbit. On our display, I want to access the function setPixel. So I want to tell you, all right, I'm now talking about this specific pixel. Now we tell it what pixel we're looking at by telling it the X coordinate and the Y coordinate. So as you can imagine, so if I want to talk about this pixel here, I would say display.setPixel 3, 2, because it's the third one across and it's the second row down, if you include 0 as well. So, then we have the brightness as an integer from 0 to 9. We aren't going to worry too much about the brightness for now. We're going to pretty much just stick with 0 and 9. So basically just saying, is it on, is it off, basically. But you can feel free to fiddle around with the other brightness things as well. And so on, so forth. Okay, so the way that we can actually change all the LEDs in one command is just like as it says just here. So this is a little command that's going to show a boat for us, basically. So as you can see, this has been very handily. Sometimes these don't necessarily need to be on separate lines. Each of these can just be in one full line. But especially when you're getting started with microbits, and especially if you're dealing with students who aren't super comfortable with microbits just yet, it can be easier to have each of them on a separate line because it can make it a much more visual thing for them. They can look at it and actually say, oh, okay, I can see, here's my array, that's a pixel, that's a pixel, that's a pixel, that's a pixel, and that's a pixel. That sort of thing. So as you can see here, obviously we have a line here where every single light is turned on. And then we have a line at the very top where we have a light turned off, on, off, on, off. And down here we have off, on, off. So what that's eventually going to show is a boat. So I'm not going to show that to you right now because we're going to use this sort of command in a second anyway. But as I'm sure you can sort of imagine, that will look something like a boat, basically. All right, and that's actually it for the PowerPoint. So we can actually now get started straight into our first program. I'm just gonna close that one up. All right, so first of all, before we get started, did you guys have any questions at all so far about how this works? Is everything clear so far? Awesome. As always, yep, feel free to just pop any questions that you might have into the chat so that I can see them. But yeah, all looks good just there. All right, so let's start making this guy. So I'm going to just get rid of all this code for starters. We're going to start from the very, very beginning. Now, just like with Python, we need to remember that we need to put in our comments as well. So if someone else comes through and looks at this, they can actually understand what's going on. So what first we're going to do is we're going to get a program which is going to display different emotions. Now, I'd love to show you this, but I'm just going to, this is the code for it. So it's going to be cheeky and sneak this in here really quickly. We'll go through this properly slowly, but I meant to actually leave a version of it up so I could show you it. We'll grab it from, where is it? Downloads, here it is. And we'll just pop that one straight over into my Microbit. It's loading. And then I'll just show you up nice and close. This is what's going to happen. So that loads up for me. Come on. All right. So it starts off with a little blank face. And now if I press the press button A or button B, what's going to happen is I press button A. It's going to slowly but surely, oh, this is button A. It's going to slowly but surely get sadder and more sad until it's horrified. And if I press button B, the opposite's going to happen. It's going to slowly but surely get, I'm just going to turn this off actually, that might make it a bit easier to see. There we go. It's going to slowly but surely get happier. That's blank again, it's smiling, and it's a big grin. And then again, I press button A, smiling, neutral, sad, horrified. Okay, so, okay, now I'm just going to get rid of all that code, pretend you didn't see it. Right. So, first of all, we want to make sure, as I said before, we have to import the library, because even though this is an editor which is dedicated to microbits, we still have to tell it to import all the functions from Microbit, otherwise it'll still get confused. So first of all, we want to make sure that we import the Microbit library. So we're going to say from Microbit, import star. So exactly as you might imagine, basically saying from the Microbit library, the star just means we want to import everything from that library, leave no man behind. So first of all, what we're going to do is we want to make sure that we can actually program our faces. We want to actually figure out, okay, I need this face to be that thing, I need that face to be that thing. So to start off with, I might even just try displaying one face at a time. So first of all, we'll just grab up a display.show, which as we learned before, basically just means I need you to display, I need you on the display to show this thing which I'm about to tell you. So first of all, we're going to just try displaying a particular face. So let's say we wanted it to be a face that was the really happy one with the very big grin. So that one would be what we'd call joy. So I'm going to say display dot show image, because it needs to be. I'm going to tell it now that I'm going to be talking about every single individual pixel, just like that. Display image, and then open brackets again. And now we're going to type this as if we're typing a string, because even though we're going to put it in inverted commas like this, Python will still understand that actually what you mean here, it's kind of more like binary code as opposed to anything else. So for joy, we need to think about exactly which pixels need to be lit up. We know the very top line, so I have joy here. Up the very top line, we know we have the lights go in the formation of off, on, off, on, off. So that means, so it's off, on, off, we have 0, 9, 0, 9, 0. Just like that. And now to tell it to go into the next set of the next line of pixels on the array, I'm going to just put in a colon like that. I still didn't figure out if that's a semicolon or a colon, but that's okay. Now for the next line, we can see that there are absolutely none turned on at all. So that would just be 5 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. For the next line, we've got it's kind of hard to see on there, but they're actually all turned on the next line. So I'm going to have 5 nines, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then for the fourth line, we have it turned on, and then off, 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 and then on. So we've got on, off, 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 on. And then for the final line, we have off, on, off. So the opposite. So we have off, on, off. Now to finish that one up, all we have to do is just close up the string, close up our image brackets, tell it, okay, that's all you have to have on the array, and then close up the show to say, all right, that's all you have to have in this show right now. Okay, so now I'm going to just give it a little name up here. I'm going to call this one, this is just going to be called joy_test. Now I'm going to download this one. Great, grab my documents, it's appeared over here, joy test. I'm going to pop that one over into my microbit. It's just loading for me, and then we'll see if we've done it right. Bum, ba-da-bum, bum, bum, bum. Waiting for it to finish, and there we have joy just there. Now if I press my buttons, nothing happens, because in this program, it doesn't know what the buttons are supposed to do. It's just going to stay on joy for us the entire time. Okay, so we have our first face working. Yay. Now all we have to do is tell it all the other ones, basically. So first of all, what I'm going to do is, because we want to be able to show a whole bunch of different images, first of all, I'm going to actually define these things as variables. So I'm going to get rid of all these because, as we know, a variable is just a place to store information. This bit of text that I have here, all that is, that's a chunk of information. If I can assign that to a name, then when I want to refer to it later, all I have to do is refer to the name. So I'm going to call this one just joy. Joy is assigned image with those specific coordinates for the array. Now I can go through and do the same one for the other ones as well. Now maybe I'll just do a few, there's actually, I won't take you through the individual coordinates for every single one. What I might do is I'll just type out the array type coordinates for the two other ones we're going to use, and then I'll send them through to the chat so that you haven't got to type them all out yourselves. So we have horror, which is going to be image. We have 09090, 00000. Then we have 09990. 90009 99999. Okay, so we have that one is horror. I'll send that through to our chat for you. Save us all a little bit of time. There we go. And then we'll do, what was the one? This one's a bit of an odd name. We're going to call it Better Meh, which basically it was just the blank one that we were talking about before. So image, that one starts with 00000 09090 00000 99999 00000. Now, if any of these don't work, feel free to just let me know. I probably just typed something wrong. But just to save a little bit of time, we have Better Meh. There we go. All right, so we have 3 emoticons lined up. What we're also going to do is we're also going to try using some of the pre-made images. So if we remember back over from the PowerPoint here, we had a few here, and you can Google it to see the full list of some of the images that you can use with microbits. But when we had some that were called just happy, sad, angry. So what these are is they're basically just pre-made types of variables almost. If I use these specific keywords, then the microbit's already going to know what I'm talking about. So first of all, what I want to do, because I'm going to be cycling through a list, I'm going to actually put all of those into a list. So I'm going to call my list emotions because I want to be able to sort through my emotions. Now with this one, we're going to put this one into square brackets like that. Now I've just got to put them in the order that I want them to cycle through. That's kind of important because if you don't put them in the right order, because of the way we're going to program it, they're always going to appear in the order that we put them in. So I want them to go from the angriest to the happiest. So the angriest would be horror. So we want to have horror in our list. And then what we're going to do now is we're going to reference the sad face. And so to do that, if I come back over to my PowerPoint, that one was just sad in all capital letters. Now I haven't got to worry about the display.show, but what I do need to tell it is I do need to tell it that we're talking about image. Because if I don't tell it that we're talking about image, then it's going to think that I'm referencing a variable that I've made. And when it can't find it, then it's going to get very confused. I'm going to get an error, basically. So I need to say it's image.sad, just like that. And then we had better meh, which was our blank face. And then again, we had one pre-made one that was called happy. So I'm going to call that one image.happy. And then finally, we've got joy at the very, very top. Okay, so because now what we need to do now is we need to tell it actually which face to start on. We need to give it a variable to tell it what face it needs to be actually looking at, which we're going to refer to later on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a variable called current in motion. All that's going to be is going to be a way for us to reference where in that list above our face, which one of the ones from the list above our face needs to be. So because I have to set the variable at all, though, it means I have to give it a value to start off with. I can't make an empty variable. So I need to give it a number. And to figure out which one I want it to be, basically, because this is going to be the very first thing that we're going to see when the microbit starts up, what I need to do is I need to make sure that I use whichever one I want to actually start on, which is, in this case, is better meh. I want to start on the blank face. Now, remembering that in Python and programming, we always start with 0 when we're talking about positions and coordinates and those things. We're trying to find the coordinate of better meh in this list. So I've got horror, image sad, better meh. So that means I know if I start at 0, horror is at position 0, image sad is at position 1, and better meh is at position 2. So that means if I want to start on better meh, I want to make sure that I set current emotion to 2 at the very beginning. We're going to be changing that once we actually get started, but that's what we want to start it off with. All right, so now I actually haven't been giving any comments, and once again, I am so slack at this. So up here, we want to be defining our faces. And down here, we want to make the full list of faces. Okay, so now we want to actually put the functionality in to actually go between all the faces when I press the buttons. So we want to say go between faces when buttons pressed. Oopsie day, not buttons. There we go. So first of all, I know that I want this to be something that is always happening, right? I want to make sure that as soon as that microbit is plugged in, I'm always able to be cycling through the faces and going on to the next thing that I want to go on to. So to do that, as we said before, we want to use while true, because again, that basically just means forever. As long as this guy is in use, this needs to be happening on the screen. All right. So now we're going to be getting into some slightly more complicated functionality, but it still basically works in the same way. So now what we're going to be doing, though, is we're going to be moving away from functionality to do with display and focusing on functionality to do with our buttons instead. So what I'm going to do is I want to say to it, as soon as I've pressed button A in this situation, we're going to start with button A, so getting sadder basically. Every time I press that button, I need you to go backwards in the list basically. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an if statement. So if that button is ever pressed, because it's in that forever loop, if that button is ever pressed, something needs to happen. So to tell it what I actually mean by button press, I need to say button underscore A. So that basically, oopsie daisy, button underscore A. So again, telling it, all right, right now I'm talking about specifically things to do with button A, not the other buttons, just button A. If button is pressed, which I say by saying get presses. Now I know that's a bit weird that it doesn't get pressed, but I didn't mistype that. It is definitely get presses. If button A dot get presses, so every time this button is pressed, something needs to happen. So put in my colon, go onto a new line. Again, it's automatically indented for me. I'm gonna just try and get rid of that guy so we have a little more room to work with. There we go. Come on. There we go. Okay, so if button A is pressed, what needs to happen? Well, what we want to do is we want to make sure that what we're displaying actually changes. So assuming down here, I'm sorry, I'm going to just really, what needs to happen inside this while loop is we need to have one of those display features. So we need to have display dot show. Sorry, I should have done this before, but I just totally missed it when I was reading through my notes. So we're going to actually display something on our little LED screen. So what we want to do is we want to display wherever in the list of emotions I've told it to be. What we're going to do is we're going to refer to that by using our current emotion variable. So first I need to tell it we need to look inside the emotions list by just saying emotions, just like that. Now we're going to tell it to go to the specific position that current emotion is by saying now inside some square brackets, current emotion, or whatever you've called your emotion variable, just like that. So what I'm saying is whatever current emotion is, which is, where's my mouse? There it is, which is 2. So right now I'm basically saying in the second position of the emotions list, so it'll go up here and I'll find that 0, 1, 2, that's better meh. You need to display that you need to show that on our display. So a lot of this can be read to just sort of work backwards a little bit. We're going to display it on our current thing up there. Okay, but we need to tell it to actually, we need to now make that dynamic. And to do that, what we do is we set now current emotion to something else. Now, this is where one thing that a lot of students can get a little bit confused with now. What we're going to use is we're going to use this thing called the max function, like that. What this says, I'm about to give it two different integers, so 2 different numbers. Let's just say I gave it the integer of 0 and the integer of 2. What's going to happen is every time this line is run, current emotion, because I'm currently setting it to I'm currently giving it new information to store, it's going to store whatever the highest number is between these 2 integers. As long as there's the same data type, so as long as they're both integers, I haven't got one which is 0 and one which is like 2.6 or one which is a string of numbers instead. As long as they're both integers, this function will always return whatever the highest is out of these 2 options. So right now, if I put this through and I say display the current emotion of whatever the highest number is between 0 and 2, it's always going to give me better underscore meh. Because even though, even though I've given it these 2 different options, 2 is always going to be higher up than 0. So it's not even going to look at what's in this. It's not even going to look at what horror is. It's only ever going to consider better meh, because 2 is always going to be higher than 0. So what I want to do now, because one of the tricky things, oopsie daisy, one of the tricky things with using lists is that you have to use really specifically the boundaries that you set for yourself. I think I just saw a chat come through. Current emotions bracket, where from? Okay, so what I'm saying here is, sorry, as in, is that asking where I got this bracket from or what I'm referring to when I say that? Sorry, I'll unmute you. Sorry, here we go.
Sorry, where did it come from? I can't find it on the keyboard.
So it should be next to your P key. It's just a square bracket.
Oh, yeah, okay. I've just never used it before. So.
Yeah, no worries at all.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so it's the same one that we need to use for our list up here as well. Okay, all right. So, yeah. So where was I? Here, yeah. So because we don't want to go outside of the boundaries that we set, because otherwise nothing will be displayed, because it'll be looking, here for example, I have 0, 1, 2, 3. I've got 4 positions that I can refer to in emotions. If I reference the 6th position or even the 5th position, the microbit's not going to have any idea what I'm talking about. it's going to think, I've got no information for that position. I can't display anything for you at all. Or in a Python program, you get an error returned instead. So we want to make sure there's absolutely no way that we can go below 0 or above, what did I say before? 5, I think? Or above 4, rather. So to do that, we're going to say you need to choose whatever the highest number is between current emotion minus 1 and 0. So basically, let's try and break this down a little bit. In this line of code, I'm assigning a new variable, I'm assigning a new number to our current emotion variable. So I'm saying whatever current emotion was before, so let's say I started with 2, if 2 minus 1 is smaller than 0, then you need to set current emotion to 0. So at the same time, if my current emotion was 4, if we started right at the very top, I started all the way up at joy, and I said, okay, if 4 minus 1, which is 3, if that is higher than 0, then the new current emotion needs to be 3. And then again, when I press A, which will now, so now current emotion equals 3. If current emotion minus 1, so 2, if 2 is higher than 0, then current emotion now needs to be set to 2. But if we're now all the way back down at 0, if we're all the way over at horror now, if current emotion minus 1, so 0 minus 1, which would be negative 1, if that's higher than 0, which it isn't, then it would be set to minus 1. But because 0 is higher than minus 1, current emotion will instead always be set to 0. So it can't go any lower than 0, because every time it's going to do that little calculation and it's going to find out that 0 is the highest number. Now, that's all well and good for getting it lower, but getting it higher is a very similar process, but it's a slightly different function. So I now want to say else if, because I've got one if for if I press button A, but for if I press button 2 and I need to get happier, I'm going to use this thing called elif. That basically just means else if. So if you press this one, or else if you press this one, or else if you press something else, I could have 1,000 elifs if I really wanted to, but because we're working with a microbit, you're a little bit limited in that way. So else if button underscore B, so the same thing, dot get presses, and then brackets like that. Else if button B dot get presses. Now we're going to set current emotion. See daisy. Current emotion, instead of max, we're going to use min, whoopsie daisy, min, current emotion, and instead of minus, we're going to use plus 1, and now because we're making sure we aren't going any higher than our highest possible one, we want to make sure that the highest option is 4. So the exact same way as max, but it's just sort of the juxtaposing options. So again, we'll say, let's say I'm starting with 0. So let's say I'm all the way down at horror. So current emotion equals 0. Current emotion plus 1, that would be 1. So is 1 smaller than 4? It is, because min, it'll look for the smallest number between the two. Is 1 smaller than 4? It is. All right, current emotion now equals 1. I just saw a comment, a chat up here. I think it's 5. Let's have a little look. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. So I'll unmute you now, Jess.
It's all right. I was just checking.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. So because we always start with 0 down here, so we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, just like that. Sometimes an easier way I've found to think of it is the number of commas that you can see in a list, because you're only ever going to have 4 commas between all these things here. So especially if you have students who are kind of struggling to understand it, it's not necessarily a foolproof way of thinking about it, but it can make it a little bit easier sometimes. Okay, and then again, at the other end of the spectrum, let's say I had current emotion set to 4. I'm at the very happiest I can be, I'm at joy. If 4 plus 1, that's 5. Between 4 and 5, which one is the highest number? Well, sorry, which one is the smallest number? Well, 4 is the smallest number, so that means current emotion needs to be 4. So again, when A is pressed, it'll always check for what is the highest number, And when B is pressed, it'll always check for what is the smallest number between the two options. So that way, we'll never, ever leave our little list of options. We'll only ever have those as options. So then that is actually the program. So first of all, we'll just have a little download of that one. Here we go in the chat. Matter of buttons are labeled lower or uppercase. With our buttons, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure they do need to be in lowercase. Just because because we're specifically referencing features on the microbit right now. If you had different things in uppercase, I'm pretty sure the microbit will get confused and it'll just start thinking that you're talking about functions that it doesn't believe exist. So I think the buttons do have to be all in lowercase, but I might be wrong. I'm actually not 100% sure about that one. Okay, so now we're going to run this one. So we've got, give it a name. This one's going to be emoticons. I'm going to download that one, show it in my folder just here. I'll pop this one over into my microbit. It's just flashing for me. When it finishes loading, I'll just pop me up into big screen up here. There we go. And now, so we start with our neutral face, as we can see. If I press A, you get sadder, and it gets sadder. And then I can't get any sadder than that, no matter how many times I press my button. It'll only ever stay there. And now if I press B, it gets a little bit happier, and a little bit happier, a little bit happier, until it's at its happiest. And then I can't get any higher than that. Okay. So, put that back up there. There we go. So that is the first program. That's done now. Did you have any questions at all before we move on at all? I'll unmute you all so you can all talk to me if you'd like. Oopsie daisy.
I got a syntax error, so I don't know what I've done.
Syntax error, no worries. I can help out with that one if you'd like. What I can do is I'll just stop sharing my screen. All right. I might just...
Can I share my screen with you?
You should be able to. There we go. Yep. Let's have a little look. Okay. So where has it told you where the syntax error is?
No.
It hasn't. Okay.
Yep.
So image.sad, image.happy, button A.get presses, current emotion equals max. All right, so you see how you have some spaces in between max and the brackets that are next to it, and also min. Try getting rid of those spaces and see if that works for you now.
All right. I don't know how to, oh, there we go. I'll try it now.
Yep. And are we good everywhere else as well?
Can you go back to your code? Because I just have to look at it. I'm still just finding out things.
Sure thing. Let me know if you need me to move my screen around at all.
That original code for joy and horror in 5, 6, and 7. My digits, my first set of digits, the 09090 in the brackets, fine, it's grey. But then I've got orange digits. What have I done wrong there?
Have you made sure that you've put inverted commas around them? Because otherwise it might be reading them as, and you should only have inverted commas at the very beginning and then at the very, very end of all of your numbers.
Yeah, I did that. I thought possibly inverted commas for every 5 digits, but no, I've got it just like...
So is that what yours looks like?
Yeah, got 09090. That's the first one for
and then
commas either end, and then 5 zeros in a row there.
Sure. Well, would you like to share your code really quickly? Your screen?
Yeah.
I'll stop sharing mine. I'll pop it back up in a moment. But if you want to share yours, and we'll have a little look.
Hit share down the bottom. Is that right?
Yep. And then I'll give you a few little options for what you can share. So if you just find your internet browser.
Yeah, I'm just clicking on this.
All right. Yep. So you see how you have some inverted commas right next to, right after you've had 09090?
Yep.
So if you get rid of that second set of inverted commas,
Didn't you have that? You didn't know. I must be
Well,
better.
I popped that one in just to show you what it was I expected you'd done. So
Right.
if you get rid of that one, because the whole thing needs to be basically considered one
Right.
big string.
All right. Okay. So, all right, switch me back, and I'll go and change it.
Yep. So you should see stop sharing somewhere up the very top of your screen up here. If you hold on, I can probably
Stop sharing. I got it.
Yeah, you got it. There we go. Great.
All right.
All right, I'll put mine back up.
All right. I'll get rid of those.
Yeah. So the whole line of array coordinates, they should all be in one string, one big long string.
Yeah, got that. All right. Let me just fix up the whole one.
Mm-hmm.
What did you say about lowercase and uppercase? It does matter?
So I think it does matter. I'm not 100% sure, but as far as I can remember, when you're referencing button A and button B, they do need to all be lowercase, as far as I'm aware. Because you're referencing really specific parts of the microbit, if they're spelt any differently, then the microbit might get a bit confused. Was there anything at all that I went through a bit too quickly at all, or anything that you would have liked to spend a bit more time focusing on?
I think I've just got it working.
You got it working?
I think.
Great.
I'm going to upload it.
We still have one more little mini project to go through, but it's nowhere near as in depth as this one, and we're going to kind of be more building on this one as opposed to making something brand new.
Is there a way to check it before you upload it? And is there an easier way to upload rather than the whole copy paste thing?
Download thing. Look, honestly, to be quite honest, I'm not 100% certain myself. I'm still relatively new to Microbit myself as well.
Yeah.
As far as I'm aware, I think you do have to download it and then go through all that process.
I think I've just got used to Arduino where you just go check it.
Yeah, check it for me. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is the editor which the BBC themselves actually sort of put out for the Microbit.
Yep.
So you probably aren't going to find any Python editors which are more powerful than this necessarily.
Okay.
There's like 3 different ways to program a Microbit. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think there is a way to check the code, but that's a really good question. I'll make a note of that one. And
so what are the 3 different ways to do it?
Well, let's see. There's one way which is kind of more visual programming based. So I can get up Microbit. I'll get up the actual website for it. And it actually takes you through the different ways as well. So basically the way that we're doing is considered one of the more difficult ways of coding a Microbit because it's all text-based. Yep. There's also, so there's JavaScript blocks editor.
Yeah,
that is basically visual-based programming where you just have like drag and drop blocks of pre-made code that you can just sort of connect together. So that's good if you have students who've sort of never really programmed before, or they are a bit sort of hesitant about having to put code from the computer onto an embedded system.
Yeah.
And we have the Python editor, which is just here. And actually, those are the 2 main reasons. They also have apps that you can use to program them, and I'm pretty sure you can kind of do it either way as well.
That's cool.
Yeah, but I'm not too familiar with the apps myself personally. But yeah, so there's a few different options. We have the chat again.
That's cool.
Microbit to PC, do you need to go through setup each time? Is there a way to skip through? So when you connect it to a new computer, you'll have to go through a little tiny bit of setup, but every time that you plug it in, so for example, if I unplug mine, I'll replug it in as well, and I've plugged this Microbit into this computer 1,000 times now. So it's safe to remove. I'll pop it out. Now, when I plug it back in, which you'll see in just a moment, I can get that the right way around. There we go. Plug it back in. It's connected for me. It'll make the noise of like the, the and then it'll come up with the select, choose what happens with removal of drives and things. But you can just start using it straight away. As long as those lights are on the screen, and as long as that yellow light's on the back, that means it's pretty much ready to use. You haven't got to worry too much about what's happening in the background because it's a really, really small device. Anything that needs to happen will kind of just happen in the background. And by the time that you actually need to put anything onto it, it should pretty much be finished. So if you're going through like a lengthy setup every single time that you're using it, that might just mean there could be something not quite right happening. And there was something else in the chat as well.
You might want to unmute just the one guy that you've got.
Yeah. He doesn't want to let me unmute him.
Oh, really?
For some reason.
Oh, maybe he's muted himself.
Yeah, there we go.
There you go. I just need that.
You didn't want to talk to us.
No, yeah. And so the Microbit has hung at horror face. So is that just so it's stopped there and won't go and it won't get any higher again?
Yeah, it won't go up or down.
Okay.
So there must be something in my code, I think.
Okay, so first of all, just to double check, because sometimes, they aren't flawless, these guys. If you want to hit the reset button at the back, it should put you back onto the blank face.
Yep.
And then just try going down to horror again.
Yep.
And now just have a bit of a fiddle with the buttons. See if you can...
Yeah, that's where it's... So there must be
stuck?
something in my...
All right. Well, would you like to share your code and we'll have a little look at it?
Sure. How do I do that?
So on the main Zoom screen,
yep.
There's a little set of tools down the very bottom.
Ah, share.
Big screen that says share. And then if you just choose your web browser.
Okay. I think it's that one.
Yep. All right. So, first of all, under your button B.get presses, next to current emotion, you actually have a subtraction.
There you go.
So that might not necessarily fix it, but that should hopefully at least make it.
I reckon it will.
Yeah, I can't see anything else there that is that's been put in incorrectly. So I'd say that must have been the only problem. So as you can see, this sort of stuff is it's a little bit fiddly. It's can be very easy to make a mistake by accident. Yeah. When you're ready, you can stop sharing your screen now as well if you like.
So Carl's written in block 5 also lets you swap between Python and block based.
Yeah.
Carl, do you mean you can use that with these microbits?
Or
do you just mean generally?
No, it's just if you want kids to slowly come over from visual-based block coding.
Gotcha.
Here in Sydney, I don't know where you guys are, but we had a little introduction to Scratch 3 on Monday with Mitch Resnick, who was in Sydney giving a little chat. And at the same time, they had in another room running an introduction to Scratch 3. And that's super cool. If you guys have seen that, that's going to be working with Microbit and a whole stack of other devices. So
so the interface for visual-based coding it's very similar to the interface for that program Scratch, which is one of the main programs that we work with coding kids. It's it's the main program that I personally teach and have taught in the past. So it's perfect for younger students. All right, so if we're all ready to go, I might move on to the next little one, which is going to be much easier and much faster to get through.
Have you got a quick second to look at mine if I share it?
Yeah, of course.
Back to it at the end.
I'll stop sharing mine. You can pop it up now if you'd like. Well, look, we still have half an hour left, and the next thing that I want to do, it will honestly take maybe about 10, 15 minutes to cover, so it's all good. All right.
Current in the if current emotion, there's a thing.
So
next to
on your first of all, on your better meh line that you've got highlighted at the moment, you seem to just be missing one of the sets of the array coordinates.
Okay.
Yeah, so there just needs to be 5 zeros now.
No, that's 5 zeros.
Yeah, you might have just deleted it by accident, and then you can close it all up, and that should be done now.
So I'll take it back off share and put in the 5 zeros. Yeah, is that what you're saying?
No, there's a couple of other things in there.
Yeah. I'm just starting at the top and working my way down, basically.
Can I change these while we're sharing?
Yeah, absolutely. All this is just means that it's like I'm standing over behind your shoulder and looking over your shoulder at the screen.
That means we're all watching you.
Yeah.
But I'm a beginner on this, so
That's okay.
Us too, don't worry.
Yeah, me too.
All right. So, then that looks all good. And then, yes, as Jess was saying, down under button A.get presses for your current emotion equals max, your what you have in your brackets next to max. That one, so that should be current underscore emotion -1, 0.
So underscore.
So basically whatever you've named your current emotion variable, that's what it needs to be called there.
What's after emotion, sorry?
Subtract 1, and then comma, and then a 0. And you can get rid of the max before current emotion that's inside the brackets. You just need the one that's outside the brackets. So all we've said there is we're just choosing whatever is the highest number between our variable, subtract -1 and 0.
So it doesn't really matter, that spacing. Can you see how I'm flipping back and forth?
Yeah, the space doesn't really matter as long as there's a comma in there. The space is kind of just for readability purposes, so that if someone else comes over and looks at it, they can see it and they won't, they might miss the comma by accident and not realize.
So in theory, that should work.
Yeah, that'll work fine. That'll work fine.
Later. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
And I can just save that and come back to it.
So one last thing is... Sorry, my thing I just popped up. There we go. So your final line with the display.show, we need that to be outside of the else if. So if you go down to that one, just click just before the D. So make sure your cursor is in the very first position. Just hit backspace once. Because when it's indented like that,
we want to come back.
There we go. Yeah. So just the one time. There you go. So when it's indented, that means it's still part of the else if, and so it'll actually only display when that else if condition is met. When it's outside, when it's on the same sort of level of indentation as the if and the else if, then it'll run sort of no matter what, because it's inside just that while true. And now that should work perfectly, as far as I can see, unless I've missed something, but that reminds me.
Just a little feedback on my question before while you're doing that. The button A, it needs to be lowercase. I just tried it uppercase and it didn't like it.
Yeah.
It scrolled a message say button A is not defined.
Yeah, that's what I figured as much. Okay, so Carl, you can feel free to stop sharing your screen now. All right. All right, let's just run through this last little one quickly now. We're all good, so we're all happy to move on now?
Yep.
All right, well, I'm just going to put you all back on mute now. So any questions, please direct them to the chat. All right, so what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to actually open up a new screen of this. Oh, oopsie daisy, I just realized I didn't actually start sharing my screen again. We'll just share the whole screen. What the hey, bit easier. All right, so what I'm going to do now, once that goes away, there we go. I'm going to actually open up a new screen of this. So I'm just going to copy that, open up a new tab and paste that in there, just because I'm just going to show you a new feature, and then we're going to come back to that program that we're just working with and change it around a little bit. So first of all, I'm going to get rid of all this code up here, but we're going to start off just by importing the Microbit library. So we're going to import Microbit, whoopsie daisy, from Microbit, import everything. All right. So first of all, what I want to show you guys is the scrolling text function, which is another one of the really basic features that we use with Microbits. All that means is I'm going to write a string of text, and then it's going to scroll across the screen here, which is just a way for us to be able to see a little message, basically, which will come a lot in handy in later projects that we'll do on different days. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do one line of text. So we know we're talking about the display because we're talking about our 5 by 5 array. So I need to make sure I'm referencing the display function on my feature on my microbit. Now we want to reference the scroll function of the display. Now all I'm going to do here, pardon me, is I'm going to, in a string, I'm going to just write some text. So I'm going to just start off with the really basic hello world. This is one of the things that we actually looked at very, very quickly at the very beginning. But we're going to go through a little bit more detail now because it is one of the more heavily featured functions of a microbit. So, hello world, and now what I want to have in here is I want to have a thing called a delay. Now, all that is, I'm going to give it an integer number, make sure it's relatively high, so somewhere in the hundreds. I'm going to give mine 150. All that is, that just determines how long it takes for the text to scroll across the screen, basically. If it was higher, then it'll take the text longer. So if I gave it a delay of 300, then it'll take twice as long to scroll across the screen. But I'm just going to stick with 150. Display.scroll, hello world, delay. Now I'm going to just give this one name, call it hello world. And now, if I download this, find it in here somewhere, here it is. I'll pop this one into my microbit. It's just loading up for me. And then, when it decides to load up for me, and it started to just go through and say hello world. It's really hard to tell, I know, because my webcam is not very good quality, but it is actually saying hello world. And then it'll have a little bit of a delay, a little bit of, sorry, it'll only do it once because I haven't put it in a loop or anything. If I'd put it inside of like a while loop or a repeat loop or an if loop or something, then I could, oopsie daisy, could make it happen a few times in a row. Because it's just there the one time, it'll just run through it once and then it'll stop. If I hit the reset button, then it'll do it again. But every time that the microbit runs its code, it'll only run this once, just like that. All right, so now that's all the scroll function is. It's really easy. You just tell it that you're talking about the scroll function, give it a string of text that you want to have displayed, and you can say delay 150. I'm not sure if, oh no, I won't worry about that right now. Yeah. So what we're going to do now is I'm now going to go back into the program that I had before. I'm not going to change this one just so I still have a copy of it. I'm going to I just copied all the code now from over here, and I'm going to dump all this back over into this section here. Now, I might just get rid of some of this stuff because we aren't going to worry about faces anymore. I'm just going to get rid of the things from up here that we don't need. We don't need that, and we don't really need the list anymore. We just want current emotion, and we just want the to have the if the button is pressed just there. And that means because we aren't referring to a list, we don't need that anymore. No, yep. See Daisy. How to open a file I've saved before. If you've saved it as a hex file, I think what you can do is if you hit load, you can pick a file like this. I'll choose a file from my computer. Then I'll find the directory where I've saved it. Mine was saving into my downloads folder. And then I could open one of these here like this by double clicking. And then that should load all the code up that you had before. So all I did just then was I just got rid of everything but these lines of code here. I'm actually going to say go between text, and up here we're going to have some start text. Because all we're going to do now is we're going to do sort of a version of the emoticons, only instead of faces, I'm going to just have different text that scrolls through depending on what button I've pressed, basically. So I'll give you just a moment to catch up. I'll just pause there for a second. and I'll unmute you all. So just let me know when you're ready to go. Oops, Jess, you've muted yourself, so I can't unmute you, but that's okay.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Okay.
Pardon me. All right, are we right for me to start moving on? Or do you want me to just wait for another minute or so?
Just like 1 minute.
Sure. No worries. There's no rush at all.
I thought it might be a bit loud.
What we have left to do is really, really easy. So there's no rush whatsoever.
Subject animation, go between buttons first, one true button first. All right.
Okay. Oops. Have we just lost Jess?
Not on the screen.
I think yes, possibly either. I think her internet might have just disconnected. Might just give her a moment to come back in. There we go. We have you back?
Yeah, sorry. My
That's-
internet dropped out.
That's all right. No, I figured that's what happened.
Yeah.
All right, so you ready for me to move on?
Yep, I'm ready.
Okay, great. I'm just going to put you all back onto mute for a second. Okay, so what we've got now is we've got a variable ready to go. Right now, there's nothing in it whatsoever, and we've told it, okay, forever, something needs to happen if I press the button A and if I press button B, and something always needs to be being displayed. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give every single one of these sections a different bit of text, basically just saying, depending on what's happening, a bit of text needs to be displayed. Now, when the game first starts, we want to just start with a neutral face. It's going to work in a very similar way to, sort of like a simplified but similar way to the last thing we just did. So when it starts, it needs to be neutral. So I'm going to start off by just saying, okay, current emotion, all I'm going to put into current emotion is just a string called blank. That's all it's going to be in there for the very beginning, just so I can actually have something in there for setting up purposes. Now, if button A.get presses, so if I press button A, what I want to have happen is I just want to say, well, now I'm happy because button A was pressed. So in this case, we're going to set current emotion to happy. And then in the exact same way for button B being pressed, if I press button B, I want it to say sad. So again, we'll set the text that's in current emotion, we'll set the data that's being stored in there to just a string that says sad. I'll give you a moment to just type all that in. Yep. So when it starts off, it'll just say blank. If I press the button A, it'll mean I'm happy. If I press button B, it'll mean I'm sad. And then finally, all we're going to do is we're just going to say, okay, we know we need to display something. All we need to display is whatever is in current emotion, because every single thing that I've given to current emotion is just a string. So if I just put in current emotion here, I haven't got to put it in a string. I can just call the variable. Whatever is in current emotion, you need to show it on the display. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to change this show to scroll. So now it'll do exactly what I was showing you before on that little mini thing that we did just before. So now whatever text is on there, it's going to scroll across on the LED array. So I'll unmute you all.
So we need to save it, then drag it over to the Microbit, or can we just load it straight onto the Microbit?
So we'll download it first of all, just like before, and then, so it's just called Hello World 1 for me. I'll pop that one onto my Microbit. And then once it's finished loading, my light's still flashing, so it's still just loading. Dun, 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 dun. So it'll say blank, because it's just started for me. Blank. And now if I press button A, once this text has finished scrolling through, the next thing it's going to say is happy. And then again, if I press button B, once that text is finished, it'll say sad. And it'll keep saying sad over and over and over again because it's in that while true loop. So it'll keep saying it over and over and over again. And then while sad's going, I'll press A. And so once sad is finished, it'll go on to happy, and so on and so forth. And if I hit reset on the back, it'll go back to blank. And it'll keep saying blank over and over and over again for me. That's all it is. A really, really,
Tell me
really...
your code again. Just
That's all right. Yeah, no worries, no worries.
Sorry.
No, of
All
course.
right, got it.
So I just dragged the scroll program out of my downloads over to my Microbit.
Mm-hmm.
And does it normally take a few seconds to load?
Yeah, it does. So if something is loading, then the light on the back of your Microbit should be flashing, just a little orange light. It'll be flashing a little bit. And then once it's finished loading, it should just run the program automatically.
Where are we? Something did go across, but I didn't get time to read it. Now it's just gone blank. I have no lights on my Microbit.
No lights on?
No, I've got orange on the back. It's not flashing. Should I drag it across again?
Yeah.
It's only played once, and it doesn't have a memory, does it? It doesn't store.
No, well, yeah. It has a tiny memory. It'll play whatever the most recent program is that you put on there, basically.
So if I press A and if I downloaded it properly, it should just play it again. Yeah.
Sort of. So what I might do is I'll just just one moment. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for a moment. I'll bring it back up in a moment. Mm-hmm. And then Carl, if you want to share your screen for me, I'll have a little look, because if nothing's happening, it's quite possible there's just like a little bit of a line or something that's missing somewhere.
Yeah, sure. Let's see. Where's my share screen? Share.
All right, current emotion equals blank while true. Okay, so one thing, everything looks absolutely fine. The only thing that you've missed, which is a bit of a crucial step, the very first line of code that you have from Microbit import, you need to have an asterisk after that import, because that's where you tell it what from the Microbit library you're actually getting.
So that,
like a little star. You haven't got to have the colon or anything. Just says from Microbit import star.
Oh, sorry, asterisk.
That's right.
Yep.
Sorry, that's a hashtag. So the asterisk is above the 8.
There it is. There
we go. Yeah. So if you can have a space in between import and the star. There we go. All right. And then I'll just double check one more time. Equals happy, equals sad. Scroll current emotion. Yeah, that should now work fine. So if you wanted to
download that, I'll call
Yep.
it scroll. Give it another name.
Yep. Yep. So if you wanted to stop sharing your screen, you're welcome to. I'll just put so I can put mine back up for someone else to have a look at in case there's anything that's been missed.
All right, it's madly flashing orange. So that means it's downloading.
That's good. That means it's coming across.
And do I wait for it to stop flashing?
It'll just start automatically when the light stops flashing.
So I've got text running across the screen.
Yep, and it should say blank.
Yep, that's it. Yep.
And then if you press A, after blank has finished, it'll start saying happy.
Yep, you're
right. And then
right.
if you press B, once happy has finished, it'll start saying sad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then it'll just, whatever the most recent one is, it'll just keep running it over and over and over again.
Okay, cool.
To Daisy.
Yep.
Yeah, no worries. If you've muted yourself, I can't unmute you, so it's all good. Okay, but how are you going though? Is that all good? Did you get all that?
Yep.
Yep. All right. Great. So is there anything at all that you wanted me to go into in a little more depth? Because we have about 9-10 minutes or so now. That's the last of the content that I have to go through.
I just want to know where you go next. Like, obviously, you can hook things to this.
Yeah. So
it shows how much research I've done, which is 0. So yeah, where can we take it?
So we'll talk a little bit more about it. I'm not sure, Jess, if you're enrolled in the upcoming PDs that we've got for the summer. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the other tools and things that you can incorporate it into with that one. But the great thing about microbits is that even though they've got a few different functionalities and such, because they are so simple, you can really do kind of whatever with them. There are, if you wanted to go to a really extreme level, it could turn into like a little mini video game. So with that scroll feature, if you used buttons and also you use like variables and things, you could even turn it into like a kind of like a very, takes a long time, but you could turn it into kind of like a choose your own adventure type game where maybe you have a bit of a story that comes across scrolling on the screen, and you know, pressing A or B, what happens next. Because it has the, sorry, I'm just going to pop you on mute if that's okay. Sorry, Jess, just got a bit of noise in the background. So because it has the accelerometer in there, you can use it. We're gonna learn how to turn it into an earthquake detector in a little while, so it can turn into sort of like a little science learning tool. But the whole point of the microbit is that if there's a will, there's a way, basically, because it has a basic screen, it has those basic buttons, because you can use Python, so you can use variables and those sorts of things. It has a little inbuilt compass as well. There's so many different things that you can turn it into. And it's a very generic answer. I'm very sorry for that. Can it power a little water pump? I mean, I'm sure you could probably figure out a way for it to certainly affect it in some ways. I personally don't know enough about water pumps to be able to say, yes, of course it can, with a soil moisture sensor. If you were able to find a way to sort of connect, get the sensor to be communicating with the microbit, quite possibly. But again, the only problem is that you are, even though they're very diverse and they're very versatile, you're a little bit limited to the features that are on the microbit.
Has Jess got the, can you hear me, Jess? Have you got the Grove kit, Jess? Do you know what the Grove kit is? Have you seen the Grove kit?
Oh, ooh.
Yeah.
No, I've only, I'm behind you guys on Python, but I've only just got this thing. I've had it on my desk for 3 weeks, and I've only just opened it up.
Yeah.
And it comes with a nice little manual. In that manual, there's also, now this box, $80 from Little Bits over here in Sydney at Hornsby, whole stack of sensors. You've got ultrasonic sensors, you've got all sorts of things in here.
Okay.
You get all sorts of packets of sensors.
Oh, sweet.
Mm.
Okay, cool. All right.
So that's the great thing about microbits is that because they are actually a very popular tool as well. So a lot of different places and a lot of different companies use them. A lot of different schools use them as well. And because they are getting more and more integrated in sort of, you know, the digital technologies curriculum, that sort of thing, more and more third parties are coming up with those sorts of kits. So, you know, they're finding their own ways to connect different sensors and things into the microbits themselves. So, you know, I'd love to sit here and say, yes, you can do this and that with them.
Yep.
But the truth is there's just so many different things and so many different people are coming up with new ways to work with them that really it's kind of a bit of an open-ended answer, unfortunately. But I hope that helps
No, that's cool.
in some way.
Yep.
Great. Yeah, so was there anything at all that I went through today that you guys wanted maybe a bit more time spent on? That, you know, maybe I was going a bit too fast in some places, or might have been some content that was a little bit harder than others that I could have spent a little bit more time explaining, or could have explained in a different way at all? Was there anything like that at all?
I think the only thing was just giving a bit more time to work out how to upload the code at the start.
Sure, yeah.
Then once, I guess once we worked out how to do it, it was all right. But that was just a bit quick.
Yeah, no worries.
It was fine. It was good.
Sure.
Yeah. From my end, it was a jump into the deep end because I'm only probably a week into Python.
Sure, no worries.
I don't teach secondary. I mean, I know a number of primary schools have got into Python, but we're generally visual-based block coding. I live and breathe Lego EV3s, but this is something new. But I want to get them in next year for the middle primary, upper primary, and they're definitely a step up in the circuit playgrounds, which I had a look at too. But I mean, BBC's had these things out for a while now. There's so much, as you said, stuff out there on the net.
Yeah.
So many people have come up with various things. That's why there's so much resources and material out there. It's the way to go.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about the internet, I guess, is that because so many of these tools that we use, they aren't like an Australia thing. They aren't a Queensland thing. They aren't a Brisbane thing. You know, there's so many resources available online that that you can find from all over the world. One of the things that we always try and caution about, especially when you're working with Python in particular, because Python is a really massively popular language, especially among students and people who are just getting into programming, is that sometimes there'll be a lot of resources available online, which is fantastic, but sometimes they might be for older versions of Python, or they might be kind of a bit too complicated for Python in that way. If you'd like, I'm going to just send through to our chat. This is a direct link to our YouTube channel. And on our YouTube channel, we actually have a whole series of introductory videos to if you scroll down a little bit, or in our playlists, you can find them, to a whole bunch of the different courses and things that we teach.
Today's the first day.
Oops, sorry.
Sorry.
That's all right. Okay. So there's a whole bunch of introductory videos in there. In particular, I'm pretty sure there are some somewhere about Python. A lot of the stuff that we have on there is more about Scratch, just because that was more for when we were focusing it more on our younger demographic as opposed to our older demographic. But at the same time, there's also some very embarrassing videos of me when I was doing a microlearning series. But I can't find them at this very moment. But yeah, we have a lot of resources available on our website as well, which is just here, just there. So when it comes to trying to understand a bit more about Python in particular, especially if you're struggling a little bit to this point, these will be some resources that can just help you a little bit, because they're delivered in a very similar way to the way that I just delivered our courses. Yeah. So just a few little ideas for you there that might be able to hopefully help. Otherwise, there's also, if I can find it, I'm not going to be able to, that's all right. Yeah, so we just have lots of different resources and things available online that, and also links to external resources as well. So feel free to have a bit of a wander around, see what you can find. All right, so that's actually all I have for you guys today. I hope this has been informative.
It has.
And
great.
you've
It's
been able
been
to
good.
follow along.
Yeah.
As I said, it's a little bit more relaxed today as opposed to last time where we had to sort of like fly through everything at the speed of light. And also helps we had a really small number of people today, so a little bit easier than last time where we had a larger number.
That last one you did on Wednesday the 7th, it was like an introduction, wasn't it, to Python?
Yes, that was
Yeah.
just Python. There was nothing to do with Microbit, that
Yeah,
one.
because I missed it by hours, and I sent an email, and they were pretty quick to come back and say, I think they sent me a PDF of what you talked about. Is that right? I haven't even opened it.
I'm not sure. That wouldn't have had anything to do with me at all. But if you're interested at all, I'll send these through. I sent them through before, but I'm not sure if you guys can see the previous version of the chat. I can send you through the links to the trinkets for the programs that we did on that day.
Okay.
That'll
Yeah,
be
cool.
So, sorry, are you aware of what trinket is?
No.
No.
So all trinket is it's
Just
basically
notice that, send us
yeah,
that.
yeah, oh yeah, that thing. We know that
That's
one.
free.
Yeah.
I'll take
Yeah,
anything.
yeah.
It's free.
Yeah. So all it is, it's basically an online platform for you to develop various types of programs. They have a section for specifically Python programs, and so you can write the code, you can test the code, you can run the code, and it all works absolutely perfectly. So and then you can also share your projects as well. All you have to do is, I'm pretty sure you can access it without logging in, but if you wanted to, you can log in with like a Gmail account, or there's a few other options. But these are the two programs that we did.
Okay.
I think I sent you through the harder one first, actually, but those are the two programs that we did. So feel free to jump onto those if you'd like, and have a fiddle with those. I'm not sure if I can do the same thing with Microbit code, unfortunately. But what I can do is I could try and put. See, I've got a little little document that I put together that I've been following, just with like the code that we've been writing and that sort of stuff. I can tidy this up a little bit, and I could ask that we have this sent to you guys if you'd like. So it doesn't go through it step by step, but it has got like the finished versions of the projects that we worked on. So would you like me to try and get that happening?
Yeah.
Sure. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I can try and get that done for you guys, or I can at least ask. I can't guarantee, but I can ask that it's sent to you at the very least.
Yeah.
If not, then next session, just let me know, and I'll try and find a different way to get the.
So what will happen next session?
So that's a great question. Next session, I think we're doing two more microbits. Two more microbit programs. I'm pretty sure it's like Magic 8-Ball and something else. It's just loading up for me.
So something that I always struggle with is like I can teach coding and say this is how we write, but making that link between writing a bit of code and what you're really going to do with it in the real world, apart from like games and making lights flash and stuff.
Yeah. So
I don't really get how that connects.
So one way, especially if you have students who aren't as interested in the technology aspects of programming in general, because it's all very logic based. One way of approaching it is a lot of the concepts that you follow in coding, you follow them in everyday life. Like I often think of processes as happening in a programming sense. So one of our favorite metaphors is baking a cake. So I'll just quickly, before I jump ahead into that one, I'll just try and find the information breakdown of So for the teacher PDs, so the next one I'm going to do, which is on Thursday, we're doing a Magic 8-Ball and then also a clock.
Okay, cool.
And then, so I'll see if I can find the Coding Kids blog, benefits of coding tip. See if I can find it. We have this wonderful picture that we like to put out. By the way, feel free to head off, by the way. Don't feel obliged to stick around. The session has officially finished, so you can pop off when you need to. Where is it? Yeah, so there's just an example that we use where we frame baking a cake in the context of how you would code that, so to speak. So basically, like, you know, what would be your variables? What would be your inputs? What would be your outputs?
Okay.
Baking a cake. I'm just going to try Googling it, see if I can find it that way. Here we go. And also things like, in terms of those if statements and things. So, for example, if cake equals baked, then take out of oven, else continue cooking. So that's especially helpful. I just didn't link through to the blog post just then. That's especially helpful, yeah, again, if you have students who aren't as interested in like the technology aspects of coding, because it's a way that you can learn how to like decompose problems into actionable steps and those sorts of things.
I kind of get that way. Like, I get the analogies, but then it's like,
yeah, then
what do you do with that? Once you know how to use Python, what do you do with it?
Yeah. So
lights flashing, and I'm like, well, that's not really what we're going to do. What do you really do with it?
Yeah, so, well, I, for example, have just finished a degree in IT. And so we learn not just about, you know, programming computers for games and things, but ways to actually understanding how your computer works. So knowing that when I tap on this is what's happening behind the scenes. I can see on my computer, okay, that's gone wrong. So if I break this down in my head, okay, I'm guessing that I've hit the wrong button on my keyboard, or I've pressed the wrong thing on the screen, that sort of thing. Because I suppose with the digital technologies curriculum, because they're trying to generalize technology a lot more. Yeah. It's also about understanding there's a lot more to technology than just programming, so to speak. Yeah. Programming is a really important part of it, but it's also about understanding like how databases work, and understanding how two different systems can talk together, and understanding how the internet works and those sorts of things. Yeah. So, because I guess the benefits of programming themselves, a lot of that will always come down to understanding how to break something down logically, because ultimately that's all that programming is. It's a way that you logically break something down into steps. But when you're asking on a more general scale of what are the benefits of digital technologies and IT in general, that's when you're going to get the much more specific sort of like, oh yes, well, I now understand how a database works, and so I can go into this job and that job and this job. Yeah. So I, for example, sorry?
So I was going to offer Jess something. Jess, are you secondary or primary?
Yeah, I'm secondary. Yeah.
Okay. ACS, Australian Computer Society. Are you aware of them? Yep. Down in Victoria. Go and Google them. Yep. Catherine Newington is an educator with them. Now, she recently came up and saw me this week from Sydney. She was up here for Nick Resnick and his chat. Yeah, in the city, and they offer a free service. Now, I don't know if it's for secondary though too, but they basically got a grant from the government where they will fly her around the countryside, and she came up to us free, not pushing any barrier of any sort, no products, and they will take the new syllabus or whatever syllabus you currently are going to decide to use in your state. Yeah. And they will connect it with digital technology. They will show you, where digital technologies will fit in and how you can adopt whatever you're using, whether it's Microbit, Legos, WeDos, whatever. Yeah. And all free. And the beauty of this, get this, she will go away and write you a program, and she will bring the program back. Yeah. And you'll put it into place, and you'll go and then you give feedback to her. She goes and tweaks it, brings it back, and eventually they're going to make this a public resource, and she'll have a whole plethora of these things. She's going to load them up, and I don't know who gets to see these, but it's in its early days. But
what's her name again?
Her name is Catherine Newington. Catherine Newington, and you just go into ACS, and you should find your way there.
Yep, got it.
Otherwise, I mean, are you in Sydney?
I'm in Melbourne.
You're in Melbourne, so I'm on Yammer here in New South Wales. Yeah, and I talk about her quite a bit. Okay. But you should find your way there with ACS. You can do some detective work, and it's free. The whole thing's free. I couldn't believe it.
Okay.
The Australian Computer Society is a fantastic resource. They're absolutely wonderful, and at a lot of different levels of technology as well. So from that sort of primary, secondary education, all the way up to like they were like a source that I often accessed in university. So all over the place. I also just sent through to the chat one more link that I found. We actually have a category on our website of blog posts that mention the various benefits of coding. Yeah. So you might be able to find some things there. Unfortunately, we do have to finish it here.
We'll let you go.
Sorry, I'm really sorry. I'd love to keep
thank
chatting,
you for your extra time.
No, thank
no
you.
worries. Hopefully, I will see you all on Thursday.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
See you then.
Thank you.
Guys.
Bye now.
Bye.
Guys.